You don't know flag. You don't know flag.
Welcome to You Don't Know Flag, a podcast full of stories about retro gaming, retro computing, video games, arcade games, and technology from a guy who was there and still is. My name is Rob O'Hara, but for the next 30 minutes, you can call me Flag.
Episode 108. Multitrack Recording.
Hello and welcome to episode 108 of You Don't Know Flag. Although it's somewhat difficult to call them episodes when I only release one a year. Last year I only did one episode of You Don't Know Flag. I don't know what happened to the podcast. It kind of fell by the wayside. I got busy with stuff. I have 2 kids now in elementary school, and I changed jobs last year, and so I had a lot of different things going on, and the podcast kind of fell by the wayside, but I want to get it going again this year, and so I'm going to try and do that, and this is the first episode of 2010. Have we decided what the tens are called? Are these the teens now? The teens, the tens? I avoided that for 10 years, the whole last decade. I saw those called the noughts, the aughts. I just kind of avoided that. I like the 90s and the 80s. I understood what that was, and I can't wait for the 20s. But I guess right now we have the teens or the tens, whatever they are. So this is the first podcast of the teens of 2010. Now I know historically You Don't Know Flack has kind of revolved around technical topics, and this month's topic is going to be technical once we get around to it, but this month I'm going to talk about music recording music, and I'm going to talk about the technical aspects of that. I'm talking about PC recording music on your home computer, how that's kind of evolved, my personal experiences with doing that over the last, 15 years now. So we're going to go ahead and get started talking about PC-based music recording and the technical aspects and some of the challenges and stuff like that. So I think a lot of you guys, and it's not particularly retro, but it's something I've been working on recently, is doing some recording, and I'm going to talk more about the technical aspects, so I hope you find that part of it interesting. And really, this is just something to get the podcast back going. And next month, I've already written an outline for a show about the 1541 Ultimate, the Ultimate 1541, the Commodore 64 peripheral, the new disk drive, emulated disk drive, I guess. That's going to be next month's show, but right now I've got music on the brain, so that's what we're going to talk about this month. Back in the mid-90s, so this is taking a trip back. I was working at Pizza Hut, and I had a friend that worked there who gave me a tape of a band called the Hard Boys. I've found 1 or 2 references to this tape since I got on the internet. So it must have been just, very low numbers. There was actually, the friend that gave me a copy of the tape said that it was a local band, but I don't believe that's true anymore. Anyway, I heard this tape called the Hard Boys, and it was just, it's really raunchy, dirty, type humor, vulgar songs. But what I found most intriguing about it is the more you listen to it, you realize that it's really just a one-man project. The drums, in particular, you can tell have been programmed or from a keyboard or a drum machine, something like that. And then it has guitars and bass overlaid, and then there are, of course, vocals. And, it's done quite well. It sounds, just like any other album you might pick up. So I thought it was a funny album, and I thought it was a funny idea, but even more so, what I liked was the fact that it was all done by one person. And so this kind of, I think that's where I got this bug that I wanted to record my own album. I think I got that copy of the Hard Boys album in 1994, and so the wheels started turning right around that same time. I started putting this plan in motion to start recording music. Now, at this time, PC recording, Sound Blaster, sound cards had only been out for, just 3 or 4 years at that point. And there really wasn't any good software, certainly not any that I had, and nothing that was available for free for multi-track recording. So I ended up buying a Fostex 4-track recorder. Now, a 4-track recorder is a multi-track recorder, and what multi-track means is that you can record multiple times, and it doesn't erase your previous tracks. And a 4-track recorder obviously lets you record up to 4 tracks. So that's enough to be able to put 1 track of drums, 1 track for guitar, 1 track for bass, and then 1 track for vocals. A lot of people use them, if they're just laying down rough ideas, stuff like that. Now, there is a technique you can also use. I've seen it referred to as ping-ponging, but basically what you could do is you could take 3 tracks and mix it down to the 4th track. And so you kind of like compress those 3 tracks. Now, once you've done that, you can't go back and edit anything on them. You've compressed them down. But when you do that and you get everything onto 1 track, now you have another 3 additional tracks. Basically, the idea is that you have 4 tracks to work with. And so once I had this idea that I was going to record an album, I went out and started to write songs and write music. Now, I had kind of put the cart before the horse here because I wanted to record an album, but I didn't have any music written, which is kind of a backwards way. Most people don't approach it from that way. And so even though I had decided that I wanted to record music, I didn't have any songs written. And so I went out and wrote a bunch of dumb songs. I mean, they were funny. Some of them were funny to me at the time. I think I only wrote like 3 or 4 of the songs originally, and then as I started recording, more and more songs came to me. I'm looking at the set list here. There was Quadrophobia was actually the first song that I recorded on the 4-track at all, and of course quad meaning 4, and phobia being afraid of going forward with this project. But so the idea of Quadrophobia was just an experiment to see how this thing used. And here's just a few seconds of the song. I'm going to throw in a lot of sound samples on this one, so just so you can get some ideas of what's going on. So here's a few seconds of Quadrophobia. So if you repeat that for about 3 minutes, you get the idea of what the song sounds like. But so as an introduction to recording at that time, you could kind of hear some different things going on in that. Number one, if you're going to record guitar-oriented music, you're going to need drums. And that was my number one hurdle. I play guitar poorly. On a scale of 1 to 10, I usually rate myself about a 2.5. So, but I did have a guitar and I had an amplifier, so that was already set up. And I actually purchased a bass guitar just for this project. It's the bass that I still play today when I play. But so I had a guitar and I had a bass. I had a $10 microphone from Radio Shack for doing vocals. But I didn't have any drums, and I don't know how to play the drums, and I'm terribly uncoordinated when it comes to doing different things with each hand and my hands and my feet or whatever. There's no way I was going to learn how to play the drums. So I actually looked around at some pawn shops for an electronic drum module or drum machine, things like that, and I ran across a Yamaha, I think it's called a DD5, I think it was, at a garage sale for $5. They had these 4 pads on top that you could hit with drumsticks, but it also had built-in drum patterns, just like a cheesy keyboard or whatever. And so that's the drums that basically I used for the majority, like if you would call it like the first wave of songs I recorded. All my drums were done with that. Like I said, I had to sit down. Once I had this idea that I was going to record an album, I knew I was going to need songs. So I sat down and started writing all these goofy songs. The first one that I wrote was this song called "You Never Told Me You Were a Leper," which was kind of that's what I ended up calling the album, was "You Never Told Me." But it was just a silly song. I wrote a song about Taco Bell. I wrote a song called "Don't Take My Picture," which was it was kind of based on this friend of mine. We had to do a project and he needed his picture taken, and he didn't want to take the picture. And then we started thinking about, just celebrities that didn't want their pictures taken. Here, you know what? I'm going to throw a few seconds of that on again. Now, again, remember, when you're listening to this, keep in mind, that I was only able to use 4 tracks. So if you listen, you'll hear 1 track of vocals, 1 track of guitar, 1 track of bass, and then you'll hear the horrible Yamaha drum machine clicking away in the background. So here's a few seconds of Don't Take My Picture. Ah, yes, the classic Don't Take My Picture, Please. Never charted, turns out. So, as I started doing more and more recording throughout this process, the whole album, I think it took me about 6 months to record, and certainly that wasn't like 6 months of studio time or recording time. It was more like I would come up with a song idea, I would go home, I would record it in, 4 hours or whatever. And, I mean, from start to finish, writing a song, performing it, recording it, done. And then I would, as many of my projects go, it would go on the back burner until I came up with the idea for another song. And when OJ was convicted, I wrote a song about it's called The Ballad of OJ. And so as these different things were going on, I would write, songs. There's one goofy song on my first album called Mad Melon, and I was sitting around drinking watermelon schnapps, a brand called Mad Melon, and my friend Jeff had come over, and so we sat down, and when I say sat down and wrote a song, that encompasses about 30 seconds of time we put into this. But so as time, over the next few months, I would write these little things. But since this process took 6 months to put all these songs together, I was actually making technological advances at the same time. I was learning more about how the 4-track worked, but I was also learning more about doing music, incorporating the computer in the recording process. In fact, the last song on the album is a song called Jack Flack, which was my online alias. And basically what I did was to do this song. Now, you have to remember this is 1994. So this is pre-DVD. This is pre-MP3. There's, I'm not going to say they weren't invented, but, we were using WAV files and stuff. And so I'd found, actually what I had done was I had a VCR. I had a VHS copy of Cloak and Dagger, which is a old kind of computery spy movie, and there's a Dabney Coleman plays a fictional character named Jack Flack in the movie. And so what I did was I plugged my VCR into the computer and I recorded all these wave samples from the movie. The other thing that I did was I came up with this idea. I mean, I didn't invent the idea, but actually I stole the idea from the early rappers and MCs from the early 80s that were taking break beats, which are like drum samples from songs where there's no other music or lyrics going on. And these early DJs would take these break beats and then just loop them over and over, and then rappers would rap over the top of them. So I kind of came up with the same idea because I was really frustrated with this cheesy drum machine that I was using, and I thought, what better way to have real sounding drums than just to get real drums? So that's what I ended up doing. So I started going through all my CDs and tapes at that time, and I found this song, Flack, the song. I used the opening drum sample from Devo's Whip It. So I'll play just a little snippet of this. But so when you hear this, think about Devo's, the song Whip It. Right before the guitars come in where it goes da-na-na-na-na. There's this drum loop at the beginning. So I took that sample and I looped it. So this, again, think about this musical sample has 4 tracks. It has 1 track of guitar, 1 track of bass, And then instead of vocals, I put all these samples from the movie Cloak and Dagger. And then the fourth track was this loop drum beat, which I just looped infinitely on the computer and fed it in, to the 4-track. And so I would play, the drum beat and play the guitar over it. And that was 2 of my tracks. And then I would go back after I was done with that and lay over the bass and do the samples. Now, again, it wasn't like I didn't have a MIDI keyboard. I didn't have any way to trigger these samples. I had to go play them one at a time with the default Windows wave player. So I would play one, and then I would rewind, my tape and go back and then cue it up and then play another sample. And I had to go put every one of these samples in the song manually. But anyway, here's a little snippet from the song Jack Black.
I had 10 times as many bullets as Jack Black. I had 10 times as many bullets as Jack Black. Time to go, Jack. This is Jack Black requesting an assignment. Over.
And like the first song I mentioned, if you just imagine that repeating for about 5 minutes, you get the idea of that song. I used such a small drum sample that most people didn't recognize where I stole that from. And, it made the recording sound so much better. So that was my first attempt at music recording. Now, like I said, this started maybe in late 94 or possibly early 95. I didn't really finish everything until, I want to say it was the spring maybe, let's say, of 1996. Now, in the fall of 96, I took a job and I moved halfway across the country. So before I did this, I wanted to get this project finished. So I finished up the album. I put all 12 songs on there. I got a cheap boombox that had dual cassette bays in it, and I made 30 copies of the album, and I sold them to people that I knew online and my friends and stuff. And pretty much it got 2 responses. One was that it was horrible, and the other was people just wouldn't tell me anything about it, which I think means it's horrible. So at that point, I really realized that I wasn't necessarily good as far as performers go. Obviously, the vocals on the album were atrocious. But I also learned that it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed recording, and I enjoyed the technical challenges that came in. Now, a lot of people will say, they'll ask you, like, well, how do you do recording? And it's almost the same as, like, asking someone, oh, well, how do you hack into stuff? Or, how do you program? Or what's the best programming language? It's really difficult questions to answer because a lot of it comes down to what equipment do you have? How much are you willing to spend? How much time do you want to invest? And what's the end audience? If you're trying to do this for, to get a record deal or something, well, you might want to spend a little bit more money. Now, of course, a record label is going to have you most likely re-record your album in their studio anyway. So, if you're just doing it for fun or whatever, nowadays just having a PC is really all you need. So, now, when I moved to Spokane, Washington in '96, I started a music magazine while I was there. And through this music magazine, I met a lot of local musicians, and I ended up spending a lot of time in recording studios when I was up there. And I really found that the technical aspects of recording very interesting. And so we were there for about 1.5 years. And when I moved back, I met up with a friend of my wife's who owned his own music recording studio here in Oklahoma. And so I started hanging out at the studio like every night. I would go to the studio. This is before we had kids or anything, and I would hang out there all the time and help out with the recording process. And I remember at the time, the guy that owned the studio was telling me that he had taken out a $50,000 loan to buy all the equipment in the studio, and that gave him the ability to record 24 tracks at a time compared to my little 4-track. Then he had all these different effects, like a box that would do reverb and a box that would do this or that, but they were all physical rack-mounted effects, And right around that same time, I started. There were several multi-track programs that were available, and some were free, but most of them weren't at that time. But I ended up getting, maybe a year or two after that, getting Vegas, which now is Sony Vegas. Sony bought the company that made Vegas, but Vegas was originally two different products. It was Video Vegas for video editing, and then there was a Audio Vegas, and now it's been combined into one product. And I actually started, I think, with Vegas 2, and I think they're up to 7, 8, something like that. I think I have Vegas 7, but I think there is a 8 or maybe even a 9 out now. But it was Sonic Foundry was the people who originally made it, the same people that made SoundForge, and so it's a really good product. It doesn't have as many audio tricks or effects built in as something like Pro Tools or something like that, but for down and dirty multi-track recording and putting in plugins and stuff, you can actually do an awful lot with Video Vegas. And so, after spending time with in my friend's studio, I really got this bug again, but I had learned so many new techniques and stuff, and now I had the multi-track software, Vegas, on my computer. And so that lifted the limitation I had of 4 tracks before. On a computer, you could have as many tracks as your computer will handle. And of course, that's really limited by how much RAM you have, how fast your hard drive is, things like that, actual physical things. So, even back then, you could do 6, 7, 8 tracks without having any problems. It's so you can play around with it. And if you decide it's something you want to pursue more seriously, you can, add to your machine. The machine that I'm recording on now is it's a junker I got off of Craigslist. I think I paid $150. It's an old Dell, and it has 4 gig of RAM in it and a SATA hard drive, and that's it. And in fact, I'm using the onboard sound card right now, which a lot of professionals will tell you is not going to give you very good quality, and it probably doesn't give me the best quality. But for the audience I have right now, which is you guys, it's good enough. But so when I got Vegas, I started getting back into recording. I hadn't recorded anything in several years. And let me pull up some samples here. This is actually one of the first songs that I recorded in Vegas. So you can hear a big quality improvement in just a few years. Now, this is basically my first attempt at PC multi-track recording, and I think now one difference you heard in that is that there are 2 guitars playing at the same time versus just 1 guitar, which really gives you a much beefier sound. Also, the other thing that should be immediately obvious is the quality of the drums. Now, like I said, drums have been a constant battle throughout all the recordings that I've done in 15 years because I don't know how to play the drums. So I have experimented with doing drum. Well, I started with the drum machine. I went to sampling other people's drums. Then I moved to using programs like Fruit Loops, or Fruity Loops, where you can program in your drums like into a sequencer, which gives you a lot of freedom, but it's kind of tedious, if you're going to go do a 4 or 5 minute song and to go program in every kick drum and every snare, and if you want to do little fills and stuff. And plus, it's pretty, once you set your tempo, it's hard to speed things up, slow it down, or whatever. So it takes a lot. It's not like when I first started recording where I could just sit down and loop a drum track and play over it and be done with a song in 5 or 10 minutes. This actually takes a little bit of effort. There were, around that same time, this is still PlayStation 1. This is late in the PlayStation 1 era. There were a lot of games that were coming out. Like I remember Destruction Derby in particular. There were several that had like these hard rock kind of soundtracks with no vocals or whatever. And so I was just kind of inspired by that. So I wrote a lot of songs at that time that were just, kind of hard rock songs with no vocals that I thought maybe this is one. A friend of mine was actually working on a karate game at the time. And so this is a song that I wrote that was going to be used in his game. Unfortunately, I never finished the game. But anyway, this was called Karate. As you can see on a lot of those types of songs, I would just write one basic riff and then loop it throughout the song, and then that way it could be looped. If someone was gonna use it in a game, it could be looped in the game. Nobody's ever used any of my music in any game ever, but just in case that were to happen, that's why I did that. Now another thing you hear on that song that you haven't heard before is keyboards. And again, I don't own any keyboards, but Audio Vegas has plugins for computer-based keyboards, and so I was able to just add some simple keys over that to give it kind of a futuristic fighting game type sound or whatever. But now the way to get these sounds into your computer is something I've done differently throughout the years. When I first started, I plugged everything directly into my sound card. So, I would just go to Radio Shack and go through the adapter aisle and buy enough adapters so that I could plug anything into anything. I could plug a 1/4-inch guitar jack into an 1/8-inch headphone jack into an RCA jack, and I'd buy male and female of all these things and 3 or 4 of each ones, and eventually you end up with a big pile of adapters that allow you to plug anything into anything. And of course that gave me a really terrible guitar sound. You don't get a lot of dynamics. You don't get any of the action, from the amplifier itself. And then when I started hanging out in music studios, I saw how they really do it in studios. And I had heard this term called miking an amp, but I didn't realize that it actually meant literally placing a microphone in front of an amplifier. And it's a terribly time-consuming process that involves, a lot of science and calculations, and then you might move a microphone an inch to the left or to the right depending on what kind of sound you're trying to get. If you want a natural reverb, you might put another microphone in a different part of the room, and then once you have this set up, you cannot move the microphone ever, or change any settings or whatever, which when you have a studio set up in your bedroom or your computer room isn't really feasible. So I did experiment with that for a while, but I finally found a third option, which is everything I do now. I went and bought, I bought a very expensive mixing board that turned out to be way overkill, and now I use, in fact, it's the mixing board I'm using right now for my podcast, is a little 4-channel Behringer mixing board. I think I paid about $40 for it. It has 2 XLR inputs, which are like the kind that you see on professional microphones and things like that are powered. So my microphone right now is plugged directly into that. I also have it has 1/4-inch jacks, which is like what's a standard guitar cable, so I can plug those in here. And then I have adapters for anything that would be RCA cables to get, if I need to get that in or out or whatever. But basically, so now that I can plug everything into that, this goes directly into the computer, and I don't have to mess with plugging or unplugging anything into the computer. I can do basic EQing here on the board, but most of that I do inside the computer now. So when I got this mixing board, it gave me even more freedom. And I also bought, mine is a Behringer V-amp, but the most popular model is a Line 6. But these are guitar cabinet modelers or simulators, and what they do is they work just like an amplifier, but they electronically create sounds of different people. So, like the Behringer V-amp here, I can tune in, for heavy metal lead guitar, and the sound that comes out of the other end of this sounds just like that without actually having to have a real amplifier and a bunch of speakers. So I can plug my guitar into this, pick 60s blues guitarist, and have the other side come out and go into my mixing board and have that go into the computer. So the things I've been recording lately are completely silent. If I wear headphones, I can record, in the middle of the night. Nobody can hear me recording. So that has been a big advancement. The other thing is I have got better with Fruit Loops and drum programming and stuff. Like I said, it's tedious to learn it at the beginning, but what you can do is sit down and actually listen to other songs and listen to like how a drummer actually performs, and you could kind of emulate that, by programming in different fields or whatever. So when I got this mixing board, I sat down to record. Whenever I get new equipment, I always sit down and try to record cover tunes. And I just go through my hard drive and I pick, usually they're goofy 80s songs. It's something that I know well enough. And so when I got this mixing board, I opened up my directory of random 80s singles, and one of the first songs I found was Flock of Seagulls, I Ran, which most of you are probably familiar with. So I sat down and I went through. It took me probably about an hour or so, and I programmed in all the drums from I Ran, and using my guitar No, I don't think I actually on this, this is before I had my Behringer V-amp, so I plugged directly into the board and got a clean signal. And then once I had that signal into the computer, I used plugins in Vegas to make it sound like an amplified guitar. So here's just a little bit of my cover version of the Flock of Seagulls, I Ran. A cloud appears above the head. A beam of light comes shining down on the earth, shining down on the earth. The cloud is moving near and still. Aurora borealis comes in the earth. Aurora comes in the earth. And I ran so far away. I just ran, I ran all night and day. Couldn't get away. I ran. That was the funniest thing when I recorded that. I don't know where I came up with the idea to add that little guy screaming I ran, but it just made me laugh, and so I threw it in there. That's one fun thing about doing your own recording. You can just, try ideas, and if they don't work, you just delete them and start over. I should probably delete most of what I do, actually. But so that was I Ran, and that, I uploaded that to a few forums I was on at the time, and a lot of people got a kick out of it. So I'm still using Vegas after all this time, although there is a new, I don't remember the name of it. I'll add the link to the website, but there's it's not new, but there is a Pro Tools alternative that is free and Linux based that I'm really considering moving to. I think the hardware requirements are a lot lower than it is for a Windows-based PC as well, so I'm kind of considering moving to that. But the big changes now, one of the things I've started doing is downloading these collections of drum tracks, and people have put together all different sorts of drum tracks that you can download, and then kind of similar idea, I guess, to GarageBand for the Mac. This is a little more manual process, but you could go in and put together drum tracks, and it'll have several different variations. Like it'll have the regular track, and then it'll have a track with a fill. It'll have a track with cymbals added, and different things like that. So you can kind of mix and match these Granimal style and come up with a fairly realistic sounding drum track for a song. Now, it's not as it doesn't give you as much freedom as programming them in with Fruit Loops. But on the other hand, I put together. I just recently. Well, I'll throw this on here too. I just recently recorded a cover version of a punk cover version of Duran Duran's "Hungry Like the Wolf," and I haven't put any vocals on it yet. If there's anybody that would like to put vocals on that song, let me know, and I will send you the raw tracks. But I was able to use these drum tracks that I downloaded and kind of mix them and match them around. And I put the drum track together in 2 or 3 minutes versus having to program it all in, over a couple of hours. So here's just a smidge, a tiny bit, a smorsel of the punk version of "Hungry Like the Wolf" that I've been working on. Actually listen closely to the background of that, there are some very, very faint vocals because I was screaming along doing goofy voices while I was recording, and I guess the guitar pickup actually picked up my voice, but yeah, there are no official vocals for that at this point. But yeah, so as you hear, that sounds like a guitar that you would hear, at a concert, or not obviously played as proficiently, but the sound, it sounds like a real guitar in a real room. There's reverb and all sorts of modeling and stuff that you can do, and that's just done through this little box. So that's been a great addition. I think my V-amp cost me about $100 when I bought it, and before I had a crate half stack, which was it had a crate head for my amplifier, and then I had a gigantic box with 4 12-inch speakers in it. And I got rid of all that and replaced it with this little box that sits on my desk. So definitely worth it for PC-based recording. Now, several companies like PV and there's several of them now. I think even Behringer has one. Have plug-in software-based versions of this exact same box. So now you can do this with all with software. So it's kind of been this pattern throughout the years that everything that I had that I started with that was physical, from the 4-track recorder to the amplifiers, everything has been slowly ported over to the PC, and a lot of these things are available for free. Now I'm going to play one other interesting thing and go easy on the drums, because actually my son Mason, who's 8 years old, performed the drums on this next track, and this was just a very, very simple experiment. I was playing around with the recording software and showing Mason how it worked. But so we recorded just the intro of "Boys Don't Cry" by The Cure. But what's interesting on this is Mason actually played the drums on his iPod using a software program called Toy Drum, I believe, that was available for 99 cents in the online store. And it's basically a drum pad that you play with the touch screen. And so here's just a few seconds of our version of "Boys Don't Cry." And so we actually did 2 digital tracks of the drums. The first, Mason just played a kick snare over and over, boom, ba, boom, ba, and then we went back in. And the second time he played the hi-hat and added the cymbals in. And once he was done with that, I put in 2 tracks of guitars, and one with the chords and one with that little lead part. And it turned out okay, but really it was just a proof of concept to start looking at these other ways, using the iPod for drums, or just experimenting with stuff. And that's, like I said, once you've like I was talking about buying all those adapters, once you could connect anything to anything, you can use anything as an input for drums. There's actually it was a program put out by MTV for the PlayStation that was a drum machine, and I have a good friend, my friend Earl, who runs thelogbook.com, has done a lot of his music using that as the main primary source for his drums. So you can do music with anything like that. But now, like I said, the multi-track software, all the plugins that are out there, the modelers, really have replaced basically every. In fact, I rarely use the EQ settings on my mixing board anymore, just because I have an EQ and I have mixers that are all based in the computer. So that's where I do most of my settings. I'm going to leave you here with a song that I recorded for Block Party for 2009, which is a computer demo party that has a big competition where people can enter artwork and programs and music. And so I knew that it was something that I wanted to, I knew that it wasn't something I could win, but which is, people say, well, that's not the attitude, but that was the reality. Is I knew I couldn't win it, but it was something that I could enter. So I put together this track, and it's called You Can't Handle the Commodore. Now, one thing I want you to do when you listen to this is compare this back to those early tracks, the muddy, terrible ones, with the drum track. I did the drum track on this. I sampled from some break beats. Some of the sounds you'll hear in here are modem tones and phone dialing tones that I put into the computer and tweaked around. During the chorus, you'll also hear this kind of brr, this rattling sound, which is a sample from a Commodore 64 disk drive head banging up against, doing a head bang, which is what it did. The lyrics were, you probably wouldn't think are very funny. I'll put a link to the lyrics on the website if you want to read along. They're funny if you are a dork and you like 1980s retro computer technology, which I'm assuming some of you do. So, and those of you that like that have probably already heard this song. But so, it was funny. It was for a specific audience, and I ended up placing 7th out of 15 songs, which is at least 7 or 8 positions higher than I thought I was going to. Once I heard the competition, I thought they were so good. And mine was a completely different style. I don't know that any of the other songs out of the other 15 had vocals. So I kind of went into it blind. I just did my own thing. So I was glad that I placed where I did, and I did better than I thought I would. So anyway, this is kind of a culmination of all the digital recording things that have put together over the last few years. So I'm going to leave you with this song, and then tune in. Check back next month in March. Hopefully you read the blog at robohara.com every single day, because there are updates almost every single day. But if you don't, be sure and check back in March, and we'll be putting the new episode of You Don't Know Flack online. So until then, thank you guys for tuning back in, and let's do this again. If you want to email me, you can email me at robohara@robohara.com. The website's robohara.com. That's pretty much it. See you next month. And here is the parting shot. You Can't Handle the Commodore.
Listen up, kids, time to put down the Wiimote. Drop the 32 bits, hop into my boat. Talking trash like a punk MC. I punch you in the face like the ninja from Bruce Lee. My kid is the son of an 8-bit. Fun of a 64 is where I sit. I like to battle, but I won't bark on. I'll toast your ass like the Phoenix from Archon. I'm great at a million games, man. When you were in diapers, I was cleaning up wasteland. Summer games, winter games, world games too. California games, cure my summertime blues. Wanna play? Well, bring a DB nightstick. I got an old Epix that I kick your ass with. Want mercy? Well, you better start wishing. You beating me's an impossible mission. Like Hero, I'm a about to fly. With a disc notcher, I'll use your backside. Like load runner, you'll drop your load. Then I'll pick up your package of gold. You're a headbanger, cause you bang Drive's head. You're a zombie, and you're already dead. Cause I'm a serial killer with the serial cable. You're retarded, or should I say disabled? It's my pitfall, know what to do. Take notes, jump, and I'll give you a clue. You gotta jump over logs, swing on the vines, and then you gotta out of time. Well, this battle's over. I've already won, cause you come in last. I come in, come one. Feel lucky? Wanna test your ability? You beat me, realm of impossibility.
Commodore. You don't want none of the Commodore. You can't handle the Commodore.
So bring what you got, what you think? You bad man? Cause I got skills, yo, but I ain't rad man, cause he does audio, and I play games, yo, so pick up the stick, and I bring the pain, yo. Here's the church, and here's the steeple. Your only friends are little computer people. In skate or die, you always fall, so you can suck all my whiz balls. I got your head off like barbarian, and then I'll school you like a librarian. Your expectations are never gonna be met. I'll rip you apart like Race and Destruction set. You think it bad? You better get your facts on, cause I can rock a perfect score in Zaxxon. Wanna play hacker? Or hacker 2? Well, look it up, bitch. I wrote the walkthrough. Your face is red, I can tell your business. I'll whoop you in way of exploding fist. I kick ass, and I never come in last. And I'll beat your ass at Boulder Dash. Player 1, player 2, it just don't matter. Karate champ, your face will splatter. I'll whoop you like a goddess wearing leather. You can stay a while, don't stay forever. In Beachhead, you're true to the dome. You're gonna need a space taxi to get you home. I'm better than you. You're not just paranoid, and I'm a 999 impaired droid. 3 minutes, this track is through. I'm number 1, and you're 65 or 2. We're done here. And there's the door. I was right, you can't handle the Commodore.
The Commodore.
That's right, he's the king.
You don't want none of the Commodore.
You better run stop your mouth.
You can't handle the Commodore.
Oh, your disc is all floppy. He's got 2 kids,
The Commodore.
Vic and Sid.
You don't want none of the Commodore.
He's gonna get you with an ice pick.
You can't handle